Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
How you doing?
Good. How's everyone doing?
We're doing fantastic. So, is that Tiffany's voice I hear?
Yes, I'm here. I don't know if you could see me. I'm actually using my phone today because I'm in a different location.
No worries. You're in the lender relocation program.
Exactly. Although I'm not in Arizona. You know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, why don't you give us just a brief update on what's going on in the mortgage industry?
Sure. So happy Friday, everyone. Hopefully everyone has a wonderful weekend ahead of us. It's always nice when I get to come on here and give good news. The bond market's doing very well. I don't know if anybody follows that, but for the first time in a long time, we're actually under 4%. We're only at 3.99, but listen, it's trending all in the right direction. And in our world, we say what's trending, what's the trend is your friend, and today it is. So I would say over the last 2 weeks, we've had a really nice a trend of the rate staying steady, if not decreasing a little bit. So we're really happy about that. Our oil prices are, yeah.
Tiffany, I have to back you up a second. For some people who have not been on the call, the mortgage rates are not 4%. We are not that lucky.
No, the bond. So the
So you-
10-year note is under 4%.
Right, we have a lot of new faces, so if you want to just explain that relationship to everybody.
Sure. So basically, I mean, there's a lot more that goes into when and how the rates move, but we generally look at the 10-year note to sort of give us a real good indication of where things are going or what the trend is. So right now, the 10-year note is under 4%, which it hasn't been in a long time. So we know that if it starts to really shift further down into the threes, we're going to see some serious movement with the rates, and that would be really great. So right now our rates are sitting anywhere between 6.25 and 6.5 on a regular 30-year conforming product. If the 10-year note starts coming down, closer to that 3.5 mark, you're going to see some substantial decrease. So that's why we watch that. Of course, there's a ton of other things that go into it, but in my world, the 10-year note is very important. So we have some good products on jumbos. Our jumbos are around 6.5. Our FHAs, our DPAs are literally 5.625. The rest of our FHA products are somewhere in the low sixes. So we're doing really great. I also want to preface that we're seeing the market is reacting to the anticipation of the Feds cutting the rates. We already had one cut, and now we're anticipating another cut on October 29th. So when that anticipation is happening, you'll start to see like a frenzy, and the rates will start to react, and you'll see things start coming down. So that's another real positive, notion that we have to look forward to. So of course, this will all depend on economic data and some other factors, but we're all really hoping that we have another rate reduction at the end of October and then one more towards the end of the new year. So that's very exciting. And I did want to mention one thing, since your mastermind today is about unfreezing the market. If you do have any sellers that are just waiting to move forward or don't want to move forward until selling their home, you should talk to your lender, talk to me, talk to your loan officer about home equity lines of credit. I've done this several times over the last 10 months or so, where people are tapping into their existing equity and buying the new property in cash. It
Now,
works.
Now, do they need to get the home equity loan before they put their house on the market, right?
Yes.
100%. Yes. So
So,
you
so
can't
that,
have a house
so
on the
that,
market.
that's where planning comes into effect, because if you wait, the lenders won't give you the loan because they don't want you to pay it off in 2 months, correct?
Correct. But there's no prepayment penalties in our world anymore, really, unless you're on the commercial side. So, even though the lenders don't like it, it's technically allowed. And if you and the realtor and the buyer or the seller are all talking and communicating properly, you can work this out where you can tap into your equity and then you can purchase the property in cash. And then some customers say, well, then what do I do then? I have no proceeds. Well, at that point, you're sort of doing a reverse notion there, where you're going to do a cash out refi on your new property if you need the money. You with me?
Yes. And then
Right. So if you,
I'm putting on the screen Mortgage News Daily,
yeah,
and this is a good site to give you an idea of where the market's going. I don't know if this is about where you're at, but obviously credit score and other things influence the interest rate. But it shows that today the 10-year is right around 4%, and the 30-year fixed is about 6.25. Does that seem about right to you, Tiffany?
yes, 100%. Yes.
All right, so this is a good site. It's mortgagenewsdaily.com, and I don't see any reason why you can't include a link to this when you talk to your clients. Okay, so that's a really good resource. Let me just stop sharing here. And any last questions for Tiffany before we get started here? We have a lot to unpack today.
And if anyone wants to talk about home equity lines or home equity loans and how they work, feel free to call me and we can discuss that before your listing appointment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So today's topic is unfreezing the market for both buyers and sellers. And before I kind of talk about my ideas, I wanted to get some feedback from all of you that are in the front lines. Do you feel that both buyers and sellers might be a little tentative at this point? And if so, like, what's the logic behind that, so I can have a better conversation with all of us here? Ivy.
Yes, historically, when interest rates go down, prices go up. When interest rates are up, prices go down. So right now, we're in a trend of prices going down. And I think to inform your clients that prices are coming down right now. And the talk is, and the trend is, according to Tiffany, that interest rates are going to start coming down. And that's going to turn the market around where prices will go up. So now is really the time to buy for buyers.
Okay, so Ivy, I think that is, spot on information. Part of my part of the mission of today is to be able to give you the ability to communicate that to both buyers and sellers so that it has significance to them. And my experience, and I don't know if this is shared by many of you, but sometimes you feel like when you're trying to explain something to a customer, they're only half listening at best, right? So I find that if you're able to get interaction, that would wind up being helpful. And today's session, I don't know if Jose Reyes from our celebration office is on, but this topic is Jose's topic from our conversation yesterday. And he's like, I have a lot of buyers that are kind of like just not super motivated to take action, and some of the sellers are having a hard time coming to reality that prices have softened a little bit. So that's the goal of today's session. And Ivy, your point is spot on, but my recommendation on how to get to the outcome that we all want is if we just did a little bit of a role play. And if you're a client, I'd say, so Ivy, what are your thoughts about buying right now or waiting? And what do you think clients are saying?
Statistically, we can show them how prices are coming down, maybe, slightly right now. And I think, and I have to tell you, I'm working with my son. So, I'm right in the middle of all that strategy because to wait, and I show him how the sellers are starting to reduce prices. And we can go into our MLS, show them how much they're coming down almost every other month and how many days they're on the market to let them know that this is truly the best time for them to buy. We have something in our MLS where the appraisers use it. I don't know if you have that in other MLSs, but it talks about the absorption rate and it shows you over a year how many days on the market certain price ranges are on and how many houses on the market, how many are selling. So that provides a lot of information because you can't just talk to people, you have to show them. People are visual, in my opinion, and if you show them what's going on, that means a whole lot more than just telling them.
Okay, so you are spot on with everything, and I'm going to kind of maybe suggest it so you have a little bit more impact. And if I was to talk to a consumer or buyer in this environment, they might say, Ivy, I'm feeling like interest rates may go down, so I'm not super motivated to buy today, right? And what we need to do is connect the dots between their belief that interest rates might be coming down being a good thing, and if they wait 6 months and rates are lower, that's smart for them, right? So here's the problem I recommend, and I'd like to hear some of your feedback. But I'd say, so Ivy, if we decided to pick something right now, and interest rates fell 6 months from now, how would you feel?
Well, most lenders today, the way I would respond to it, most of our lenders are willing to refinance for you.
Right. Right. So that's spot on. So if you talk to the buyer and you say, hey, Ivy, if you bought now and you got a 6.25% rate or a 6% interest rate fixed for 30 years, and 6 months to 18 months down the road, rates fall down to 4.75%, how would you feel? And a lot of buyers would say, boy, I would have wished I would have waited. And you might say, well, you know what, Ivy?
You would have paid a higher price.
what you no, but you have to ask. You have to say, you can refinance at that point. Now let me ask you another question, Ivy. If we decided to wait, let's just say that we knew rates were dropping, we decided to wait for 9 to 18 months to buy. Rates are now at 4.75%. Okay. Do you think that there's going to be more or less buyers at that point, Ivy?
Far more buyers.
Do you think that there's going to be
No.
more or less? No, we got to listen to me on this. Do you think there's going to be more or less competition when you find a house that you like for your family?
Less inventory.
So
Absolutely.
there's going to be more competition. Do you think that you're going to wind up having to pay more or less if there's more competition and less homes on the market?
That's right. So you're
You're
going
going to have to pay more,
you're
right?
going to pay more. That's right.
So I think it probably makes sense for us to maybe consider being a little bit more motivated to do something today.
Right.
Now, let me ask you another question, Ivy. Let's assume that the experts are wrong, right? And let's assume, I mean, would you agree that there's a lot of things going on in the world with Trump and tariffs and wars across the planet, that it's possible that something unforeseen can happen and maybe rates go up to 8%? Now, Ivy, if rates went up to 8% and you were locked in at 6.25%, how would you feel?
Good point. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Horrible.
Ivy, I call this the fool's bet. If I showed you a coin with two heads and I flipped it, what would you call?
You flipped it.
If I had a coin with two heads, right, and I say call heads or tails, of course you'd call heads, right? Because heads is going to win every
You're
time.
going to win every time.
So if you buy today and rates go down, you bought with less competition and you get to take advantage of the lower rates.
Yeah.
And if you bought right now and something unforeseen happens globally or economically and rates go up, you have the benefit of a 6% rate when rates are 8 or higher. So to me, that seems to be a really good logic, a really good motivating factor. And what I've seen is if you explain it to them, it doesn't make sense. If you ask them questions, like, hey, if rates went down, what would you do? A lot of people would initially kind of get thrown off and say, boy, I would have wished I would have waited. But the answer is really no, because, you know, if you anybody works with builders, builders aren't cutting prices. Builders are juicing the interest rate to create demand, right? So we know that as the rates drop, demand is going to explode, right? And when demand explodes, prices go up. That's the whole COVID principle. When interest rates were, you know, 3%, 2%, people were buying just because the rates were low and they were overpaying for houses.
Right.
So this is one of the ways that I believe that we can unlock, you know, some of the buyers, right? And I want to have everybody take a little journey down memory lane, okay? We might look back at the COVID era as being like the highlight of real estate, right? But if you had a buyer, it was challenging. Okay, there was challenges to try to buy a place during COVID. There were 8, 10, 20, 30, 40 offers, right? People were stressed out. I would call Ivy up and say, hey, Ivy, you know, that property that you wanted just came on the market. You know, you need to get here today, and we probably have to make an offer by today before it's under contract and sold. Do you remember those days? Right? That wasn't that much fun, was it?
Horrible.
So now my question to everybody here is, where are all those buyers that didn't buy? Right now, they have the opportunity to look at 6 houses. They have the opportunity to do a full home inspection. They have a mortgage contingency with an appraisal contingency now, right? It's a more normal market, and everybody feels like they're on the sidelines. It's like this whole psychology has gone wrong, right? And sometimes we're too close to the market that we don't take a step back and look at it. I mean, people would have done anything to be able to have 6 houses and to be able to have an opportunity to do a home inspection, right? Back then, no home inspection, no appraisal inspection, or we did these appraisal waivers for $50,000 or $100,000. It was insane. So now we have a normal market, and buyers feel like they've lost the urgency. And our job is not only to find them the right house, but it's to educate them on whether home ownership is right for them now, right? That's how we unlock the buyers. So all those buyers that were unsuccessful, now is the time to bring them back into the market, right? All those buyers that feel a complacency about buying, like, oh, I don't need to do it now, Ivy, because houses are not selling in 24 hours like they used to. Okay. We need to highlight the fact that they have choices, that they can have a normal negotiation. And, you know, I can almost guarantee you that most buyers haven't had that exercise about what happens if rates drop. Will there be more or less buyers, right? If there's more buyers, will you have more or less competition? If there's more competition, will you have to pay more or less, right? You have to break it down into really tangible steps that connect with them emotionally.
Ready to take the first step to a fulfilling career in healthcare? Study today. Morning, everyone.
Hold on. And then you have to talk to them about, you know, their fear in the back of their head is like, I don't want to buy now because rates might drop. So if you tell them that, well, if rates drop, you're going to refinance, you know, that's very logical. But if you say, hey, Ivy, you know what? Let's take 2 scenarios here. Let's say that we bought today when we have more options and less competition, and then interest rates drop. How do you feel? And you have to ask it that way. You can't tell them that you could refinance. How would you feel? They'd be like, maybe I'd feel like I should have waited, right? And you'd say, well, remember we just talked earlier, if you waited, you'd have to pay more for the house and you might not even get the house that you wanted. But the good news is, if rates dropped 1% or 1.5%, you can refinance and take advantage of it. By the way, Ivy, you know, in uncertain times that we're in, if rates went up 2% and you bought, how would you feel? You know, you have 6% and rates are now 8%. I think every possible home buyer would feel very good about that, right? I'm so glad that I bought at 6. So we need to give them this ammunition to get them inspired and motivated, okay?
What about the seller who's sitting at a 3.25? What about those people that are saying, I don't want to give up my 3.25. I don't want to go into a higher interest rate. I'm going to stay where I'm at. The property's too inflated. What about the people that have those really, because that's what I'm finding sometimes. They don't want to leave their 3.25.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, seller motivation. There is a little bit of good news on that, Tiffany. Number one is, people are getting tired of being in houses that they don't want to be in just because of the interest rate. The loan balances are slowly like decreasing. So if you bought in 2000, let's say you bought 2020, right? You're now 5 years into it. So your balance might be down 10%, 15%. And if you bought in 2020, you probably have doubled your equity, right? So you might have bought a house for 400, maybe it's 650, and you paid it down, 50,000. So there's a lot of other factors that you want to discuss if you're, looking at the seller side, and I will get into that as well. Okay, I'll get into how to unfreeze sellers. But I think if we can ask questions to our buyers, that will make a huge difference. Okay, a huge difference in it. Now I see Abe Himmelstein's in the center of my Hollywood squares. Abe made me promise I would talk to everybody about the 10-10-0 rule. Okay, when we go into sellers. Okay, and I'm going to repeat a few things because I really want this to be second nature. And does anybody know the 10-10-0 rule? Everybody shy, or does anybody know that?
I know it by
Okay, what is
heart,
that,
use it all
Kathy?
the time.
Within
Uh,
days and within, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
can go ahead. Doesn't matter.
Kathy went first, so I'm taking the rules here.
Okay. 10 days, few or no showings, your price too high. 10 days, no offers, your price too high.
Okay, minor adjustment, 10 showings, no offers, your price too high. So you can have that the first weekend, 10 showings, no offers. We need to adjust. Okay, and it's generally accepted knowledge that if you have 10 days with no showings, it's worse than 10 showings with no offers. And the experts, and obviously everything is local market driven, but you're probably 5 to 7% above where you need to be at least if you had 10 days with no showings. If you have 10 showings with no offers, you're probably 3 to 5% too high because you're priced attractively enough to get people to come and look, but you're not priced attractively enough to get them to submit an offer. Now, can I tell you one critical component to the 10-10-0 rule, Kathy? Are you
I
okay?
unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's the critical thing. It doesn't work if you tell them after the fact.
No, you
Okay.
got to tell them while you're at the appointment going through pricing.
Correct. So if you try to explain that to them after the listing and they had 10 days with no showings, you are in for a challenging conversation. If you tell them that when you onboard the listing, when you launch it, right? You say, hey, I think we've got this right, or if they are taking it a little bit too aggressively on the price side, I want to share with you, Kathy, about the 10-10-0 rule. And I would have the homeowner write it down. I wouldn't have it in a piece of paper that I give them, right? Because if I give them a piece of paper, how many pieces of paper do they see, or how many electronic documents do they see that they've forgotten by the time they signed it, right? When you give them that, when you ask them, Kathy, can you write this down? It's called the 10-10-0. The first 10 means 10 days, no showings. We need to make a big price adjustment of 5 to 7%. The second rule, the second 10 is 10 showings, no offers, 3 to 5% price reduction. Okay. Thus the 10, 10, and zeros. So if there's 10 days and I'm calling Jason Panos, I'm saying, Jason, 10 days, no showings, you have that piece of paper. There's an expectation, right? Do you think that's a little bit easier at that point?
Yeah.
Right. And for me, when I'm a wingman or a co-pilot with any of you on a listing appointment, I love to do that because it provides clarity, right? And it is really good, sound, fundamental information. So take that from today's session. Maybe you all should write it down and maybe put that as part of your listing conversation. Okay.
Can you repeat
Sticking
that
on,
10-10 rule?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What's that?
Can you repeat that 10-10-0?
So 10-10-0, the first 10 is 10 days with no showings. Okay, so the 10 is for 10 days and the 0 is no showings, means you need to do a price adjustment 5 to 7%. The second 10 in the 10-10-0 is 10 showings, no offers, means we need to do a different price reduction. It's a little bit less severe because it's positioned to at least get activity. Okay, so if you have the first weekend, everybody loves the positioning of it, but they see the house and they're not making offers, then you need to quickly make an adjustment before you wait 10 days to optimize, the market momentum. Okay, now I'm switching back to buyers, and I apologize for this, but I saw Abe, and Abe actually, watched me have that conversation with a couple of new people that he brought in, and it was very helpful, and Abe was blown away. So he's like, Rob, you have to share that with the company, right, Abe? All right, he's on mute. So going back to the buyers, okay, we talked about all those buyers that were unsuccessful in I'm going to call it the COVID era. I think our industry focuses on asking buyers, what do they want, and trying to find them what they want. But we missed something that we did 30 plus years ago, which was kind of have a buyer consultation or a buyer appointment before we even met with buyers. If you've been in the business 30 years or more, you probably would have any buyer come into the office and you would have a discussion about buying. Now it tends to be many of us don't even go to our offices. We just meet them at their house, right? So that whole point of motivation or understanding and valuing home ownership is lost. Okay, so we may do a great job at selling homes, but selling homes is different from selling the concept of home ownership. And home ownership is not just, you don't identify somebody as, you own a car or you lease a car. That doesn't even come into the realm. But, I own a home, I'm a homeowner, you're a renter, that's an identity, right? That changes the way we look at ourselves. Okay, so we need to be able to focus on what does home ownership mean? And home ownership means a lot. Okay, and we may take for granted that people know that. And I would strongly discourage you from, going in and telling them all the beautiful things about home ownership, and be able to communicate with them by asking them questions. Okay, and who knows, one of my favorite questions about home ownership. Somebody has to make me proud and tell me, like, what do I always ask?
I do.
How much
take-
richer is a homeowner than a renter?
Renter.
Right,
And the answer is 40%.
No, it's 40
No.
times, Abe. It's 40 times.
Sorry. 40 times.
So yes, and you know how I get the maximum impact for that? Beth, I'm going to ask you, how do I get maximum impact for that?
Ask them to Google it on their phone while you're sitting there.
Correct. And then they're like, oh my God, like you get this tremendous reaction when they do that. I don't know, Frank, if you're preoccupied, but remember we did that at the buyer seminar and people are like, oh, it's 400,000 or 430,000 compared to 10,000. Like
Absolutely.
there was utter excitement when they did it on their phone. If I put it on a slide, they might still be sleeping, right? But when they do it on their phone, it has meaning. Okay, this is how we're going to influence people to take action, is by asking questions and having engagement. Okay, it's not by giving them a pamphlet or a brochure or reading to them all the benefits.
Rob, I've seen you blow people's minds when you sell to them about the 10-10-0 and actually wake them up to reality.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, Abe, is stuff that is, you know, it's common knowledge in the industry, but we haven't found a efficient way to communicate it. I'm going to kind of transition back to the buyers, Abe, and I'm going to come to the seller. Somebody asked me about, I think Tiffany pushed me on the seller's motivation because they have low rates. We're going to get to that. But I'm going to pull up my, share my screen in just a second. And you have this information as an attachment in the email notification that you got. Okay, now I'm gonna share my screen. And I'll bet you probably none of this, or very little of this, if any, is news to you. But I'll bet you we don't do a great job at sharing it with every single person that we're talking about. Okay, and this is mostly ChatGPT, but it's some of the stuff has been, you know, enhanced by me. Like, why become a homeowner? You know, building equity, appreciation potential, tax advantages, stable monthly payments, wealth accumulation, hedge against inflation, leverage for future investments, retirement security, forced savings, potential rental income, access to better school districts, long-term stability for children, a safer environment, private space for playing. You can have multi-generational living. You don't need permission for a pet. Cultural continuity, legacy building, improved mental well-being, financial responsibility, freedom to renovate without having to get permission, privacy and autonomy, space for hobbies, gardening space, stronger community ties, reduce stress and anxiety, lower asthma rates, improve sleep quality. Like, all these things here, you can keep going on and on and on. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples on how to have these conversations. Okay, like, do you think most buyers understand that there's a tax advantage to buying a house? Anybody?
I think yes.
Okay, I think most of them do. I would agree with you, Beth. I think most do know, but I don't think they know what that means to them. Is that possible as well?
Yes.
Okay, so you know, I like to ask these questions, and you know, this might not be second nature to you, but if you're talking to a buyer, you know, and I'm going to look back at that seminar that Frank and I did with Tony Johnson, and I don't know if Tony's here without being on camera or not, but if he is, he can chime in. But you know, when I talked to these buyers who had no idea about what home ownership meant, I said, Beth, you know, we're gonna do a little bit of a math question here. If you're buying a house with 3.5% to 5% down, and historically homes go up 5% a year, how much of that appreciation do you get to keep?
All of it.
But right, but you see, when I ask it, like, they're like, what? So I'm putting down 20,000 and I'm making 25 in appreciation. Like, that resonates incredibly well. And then I'd say, Beth, you know, if in, you know, the first time home that most of us buy is probably 5 to 7 years, and in 7 years your home goes up by about 40 to 50%. You buy a home for 400,000, you sell it in 7 years for 600. How much tax do you pay on that capital gain, Beth?
None.
None. And do you know, Beth, how much money you'd have to earn at your job or doing side gigs to have 200,000 tax free?
Oh, I don't know any other way to earn 200,000 tax free.
Right,
So
but
I'd
no, I'm
have to.
saying, my question to Beth is, how much would you have to earn to leave 200,000 in your bank at your job?
Oh, I'd have to figure my tax rate. So let's say it's 35%, then I'd have to increase 200,000 by my, you know,
So Beth,
after tax.
somebody take your phone out and take 200,000 divided by 0.65. What does that equal? And this is the exercise that I do at a home buyer event, and this is the exercise I would do when I'm sitting with somebody. So I assume it's around 300 something.
330,000.
So I have 307, I have 330. What's that? Can somebody give me a second on that?
307.
307.
Call
Okay,
308.
So let's just
Okay.
let's round it to 307,000, right? And we've been there for 7 years. So Beth, take 307,000 divided by 84 months. What does that come out to?
365 or 3,654. Yeah.
$3,650, right?
Yeah.
So, Beth, how many extra hours would you have to work at your job to make an extra $3,650? Like somebody who's a nurse or whatever, like they'd be like, I'd have to work another 85 hours a month. So you'd have to work 85 hours extra a month for 7 years for what you get just for being a homeowner. That's the appreciation. And that's how it winds up being relatable to them. Because if I went to somebody who's never bought a home and they have $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to put down, I'm asking an honest question. Do you think they have any idea what $200,000 means or what it looks like? Or have they ever had a check for $200,000 that they can do anything with? No, they have no concept of what that means. But they do have a concept of, if I buy a house and in 7 years it appreciates at the average appreciation rate, it's equivalent. I'd have to work an extra 85 hours a month to have that same outcome. That is significant. Nobody has 85 extra hours a month to work, right? That's 20 hours extra a week. And you're getting that benefit for free just because you own a home. Okay, that's how I take it from an unrelatable number of 200,000 tax free, and I bring it down to, you'd have to work, an extra 21 hours a week just to have that same outcome because you didn't buy a house. Okay.
Excuse me, what was that appreciation rate you calculated it on?
5%.
5%, okay. I spoke with a seller yesterday and he told me he has sold 3 different homes over the years, and each time he, the 5,000 as a couple that you can have that's tax deductible. He said you can do it over and over again. I wasn't aware of that. Is that true?
You can do it every 5 years. No, every 2 years you can do it.
If you're in the home. So you can, every couple of years then, you can buy a home that you're pretty sure is going to appreciate and have another 500,000 that you don't have to pay taxes on, right?
Exactly. And Audrey, if you're a really good investor, right, and you can make more than 250,000 every 2 years, you actually have to get married to really be able to maximize your tax concept.
Well, but there's 250. I could do the 250 one.
250 every 2 years, tax free. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you go down the list, right? And if you tell them it doesn't have significance, if you ask them the questions and then you break it down to something that's relatable to them, it's absolutely amazing. Dan Gonin, thanks for sharing that. 2 of the last 5. Yep. So you can keep repeating it if you're a really good real estate investor. Now, here's another, here's something that I would be talking to my buyers about every time, okay? And it would go something like this, and now, Mark Feingold, you're in the center of the Hollywood Square. So if you're able to talk, I'll role play with you for a second. So Mark, have you ever heard of a gentleman named Warren Buffett? Yes, you're on mute. So Mark's heard of Warren Buffett. I would say one of Warren Buffett's favorite beliefs that I know of is time in the market beats timing the market all the time. Okay, time in the market beats timing the market.
How'd it go?
Okay. Hang on.
I know. How did the showing go with Shlomo?
Sorry about that. So time in the market beats timing the market. And another one, and you can Google this because I want you to have the same credibility. Another famous Warren Buffett saying is only a fool tries to time the market. And he's many, many times had said that with his tremendous investing skill, he's never figured out how to time the market. Okay, he can find different stocks and he tries to find value, but he doesn't believe in timing the market. So if you want to buy a house, the best time to buy it was yesterday. The second best time is today. Okay. And those are things that I would explicitly share with them, right? Because in that example of 7 years, it's $200,000 of tax-free profit. You know, if you delayed it for 2 years, you're probably talking about not 5/7, you're talking about a more significant difference because of compound depreciation. The appreciation you got in year 3 through 7 is a lot more than you got in year 1 through 2, because your 5% is going off of the improved 5% every year. You know, it's called compound depreciation. Okay, so these are some of the things. These are some of the ways that we can have relevance when we talk to our buyers. And you know, we can't convince somebody to buy if they don't want to buy. Like, you know, but we can educate them and have them understand, you know, the core benefits of owning. And it's not a mystery why homeowners are worth 40 to 43 times more than their renting counterparts. Okay, it's because of all these built-in advantages that homeowners have in that process. And, you know, a lot of times I think, you know, homeowners or potential homeowners are probably not buying for financial reasons. A lot of times they might be buying because they want to provide an environment for their kids, right? Does anybody feel like that's more important than their financial well-being from all you agents working with buyers? Anybody feel that way? No? How about you, Sharon? Do you feel, Beth Steele, do you feel that some buyers are more involved in, more motivated by finding a good place for their children to live?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is I think they're even more motivated by where they can take their pets, their dogs.
Yeah.
They want to, they're seeing that if they just wait and rent, aside from market prices and aside from interest rates, they want to have a place to keep their pets.
Yeah. And I don't know I think this quote was Jay Abraham, who is a really good thought leader. And you know, he was talking on a Tom Ferry podcast. He says, you know, your house will be your sanctuary for joy, a place where your children will have access to quality friends, and a place you will look forward to coming home to, transforming the future of your children's success and wealth creation. Like, to me, like, that's a really impactful statement from somebody that's not even in real estate, somebody who understands sales. You know?
I think that that statement is more true than schools. They want to be able to feel like their kids are safe in the neighborhoods. They like seeing that kids can ride their bikes and play with friends and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I like access to quality friends. I love that statement. Like that, it's non-discriminatory, but it's, you want them to have good friends, because the people your kids hang out with have a tremendous influence on how they turn out at the end of their formative years, right?
I agree. Yeah.
So, but we don't, as an industry, we don't do a good job talking about that, because in many cases, like, we feel like we're handcuffed and we're not able to talk about things like that. But that is a completely compliant statement. Quality is your opinion, right? And I think it has impact. You know, and this is another Jay Abraham thing. Few people in sales know and understand how to ask great questions. Few in sales know and understand how to ask great questions. We all know how to explain things and do a presentation, but few of us know how to ask great questions. And then he says, and listen to the answers. Okay, you have to listen to the answers. And he says, if you want to be interesting to your client, then be interested. So if you want to be interesting, you need to be interested in what they're saying. You can't just be like asking a question and then thinking about what you're going to say next. And I see that all the time. Take the time to examine, explore, and appreciate and respect the other how the other side sees life, as their goals in reality aren't the same as ours. Okay, so seek to understand, then be understood, something of that measure. So anyway, I hope you're getting a few things that, you know, influence your mindset, and maybe writing them down even helps you to be a better listener, be a better communicator, and have more, yes, Jim Rohn, have more impact on the people that we really care about. Okay. Let me see, what do I have next here? Next, you guys want to go to sellers now? I'm going to go to the seller piece here. Okay, you know, how to motivate sellers or get them to be more reasonable is to ask more questions about, you know, why are we here? Like, you know, somebody invites us over for a listing opportunity, say, I'm thinking of selling my house. You know, we show up and we start talking about, you know, what the house is worth, right? And we talk about, you know, how we compare it, what strategies we might be thinking about to launch the home. And I think it might be wise to say, hey, you know, why are we looking to sell? What's the motivation? And I believe we don't ask that question because we're afraid that they might say something, and then we're like, oh, I might lose my listing. If I ask the question, I might lose the listing. You think some of us might be thinking that, right? If they said, come over here, I want to talk about listing my house. Why am I going to ask them? They said they wanted to list it. Well, I think you need to understand their motivation. Like, why are they selling? Where do they want to go? What's the urgency? Like, are you, Daryl, are you a 9 out of 10 to selling your house, or a 2 out of 10? I'm just curious. Like, I'm just saying, if I ask a seller, would you want to know that, right? Or most of us are like this. I just want the listing. I don't want to hear something I don't want to know, right? But I'd ask the question. It gives you context to how to go about the process. If I'm a 2 out of selling my house out of 10, they're probably not going to be very cooperative. They're probably not going to be very motivated to sell their house reasonably. And you want to ask more questions about, well, you know, tell me, why are you a 2? And, you know, is there more to it? And maybe you can ask some questions and get them up to a 7 or an 8. Does anybody ask why they're selling the house when you go on an appointment on a very regular basis? You can even raise your hand, or you can say something. Okay.
I definitely ask why they're selling the home. I think that matters because the urgency makes a difference in pricing as well. So that is a question that I ask on every listing appointment.
Okay. And then here's another question that I like to ask. And, you know, have you sold a home with a real estate professional in the past 10 years? And why would you ask that question? Why would you not ask that question?
I asked that question because I want to know what their experience was, what they really liked about that process and the real estate agent, what they didn't like, and try to get them to really expand on that so I can understand where I need to align with them and actually what I want to stay away from as well.
Yep. So basically, Beth, tell me what did you like about that experience, and what could be improved? Mm-hmm. Because I'll tell you what a lot of us do, and this is an industry piece, is, you know, Beth, every Friday I'm going to give you an update, or every Monday after the weekend activity, I'll give you an update on the activity. Well, you know what? Some people don't want a weekly update, and some people might want a daily update, and you might not want to give them a daily update. So you need to figure out, like, what's that cadence look like, right? How do you serve them?
Right. I also think that with that, I've had an experience, this was a long time ago, where somebody said, I really don't want an update at all unless something happens, like if somebody looks at the house and they have feedback or whatever. And you got to be careful at taking their word on that, because I literally lost a listing in the middle of a listing because they said, well, I know I said that, but I really expected you to contact me more, at least once a week. So I was contacting them about every other week, and that wasn't good enough. So I think the under promise, over deliver is very significant there.
Yep. And then I have some really good meat on the bone here, Beth, right now. And this is for sellers. And I'm sure I'm going to strike a chord where a lot of you are going to feel the answer to this question. And I'm going to take 3 answers to this. The only person that cannot answer is Beth Asif, because she was exposed to this yesterday. So you're excluded from answering this. But when you have a seller and you're at their home and they say, you know what, we really need to get 750,000 for this house. And here's the role play. The house is worth 675, and they're like, you know what, we really need to get 750 for this house, otherwise we can't afford to comfortably move to the next house. Role play. Who wants to answer that? And who loves that question? I'm going to say I love that question. And who wants to give me their best answer?
I think Chief Baker needs to answer that question.
Beth, I'm gonna, you know, since you were pointing the finger, I'm gonna make you answer it. So somebody tells you that I really need to get 750 from my 675 house. My honest answer is, how would you answer that question?
Well, based on what the market will support, and your home would sell in the normal market for $675,000. So when we have your home under contract and you're looking for a home, you see that the home is worth $675,000 through our market analysis. Are you willing to pay $750,000 for that home?
Okay, I mean, that's very, very logical. A very wise answer. I'm gonna just, Dan Gonan, did you want to chime in, or you just put it in the chat?
I could step forward, Rob.
Okay, so Glenn.
I heard the question.
And Glenn, do you think this happens like quite frequently?
With my best man, I was selling his house. It happened.
Okay, so what's the Baker strategy for this?
So the first thing I do is, of course, say, you know, I completely get where you're coming from. Like, you have a number in mind, it feels right, and if we could get that, that would be absolutely amazing. But here's the challenge: the market doesn't care what any of us want for a home; it only responds to what it believes it's worth. And notice I use the word market, not me, not anyone else. And then I say, my job is to make sure that we price it where buyers will actually show up. So we've really got 2 options here. One is price for the market now and capture the real buyer traffic while it's hot, or test a higher price and we pre-agree on a plan to adjust it contractually after that.
Okay, no, it's a very intelligent, well thought out answer, and I think it works. I'm going to give a different alternative, and now you're going to have 3 alternatives to go with. Can somebody give me a third one? Somebody give me a third one? All right. So somebody said I might not be the right agent for you. All right, here's my answer, and I've used it a lot, and I might have used it if I've been out with you, but you didn't even notice it. But when the homeowner says, you know, we really need to get 750 to be able to move to where we want to be, my response is, you know what, Glenn, I understand that it sounds like it's very important to make sure that you don't leave any money on the table and you get full value for your house. Is that accurate, right? So I don't acknowledge that number. I just say, hey, it sounds like it's very important that you don't leave any money on the table. You get full value for your house. You know, I'm going to go through some different strategies, and how other people in Bhutan have launched their homes, and then how those strategies resulted in ultimate sales prices. Would that be valuable to you? Right? So all the answers were very logical, but if you repeat back, say, hey, it sounds like, making sure you don't leave any money on the table is important. Yeah, if I'm accurate, then I'll be glad to share with you some different strategies. Anybody like that, or not so?
Yeah, I just lock it down, Robs, because I feel like people who hear too much data get, and just analysis paralysis. So I basically just present the two options, and and I purposely present the second option of the higher price as the second option, and it just seems irrational by the time I get to that point in the conversation. And I've never had anyone still insist on their price. Well, I shouldn't say that. I had one that did it, but I locked him in at a 30-day adjustment in his contract that was guaranteed. So I said, you have to reduce by $1 million in 30 days in my listing agreement.
Okay. So maybe next time, if you like the 10-10-0, maybe you can make it a 10-day adjustment, Glenn, instead of 30.
This one's unique because it was 3 million with a bunch of complexities and builders and stuff. But
Gotcha.
I knew, but in fact, what's crazy is I got a cash offer on that price, so I was wrong.
Hallelujah. So I'm gonna give you another statement here, and I just want you to listen to this. No one has ever audited you saying something dumb on an appointment. If you have, it's not your fault, but it's your problem. Nobody's ever audited you saying something dumb at an appointment. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. So a lot of times we say things that aren't consistent with the outcome we're looking to get. And a lot of the times that we do that, it's because we get pulled into an emotional part of the conversation, and we don't stay true to our system. Like, sellers are emotional, and it can't be stopped. Like, that's just who they are, and we can't effectively win them over consistently with logic. Okay, so maybe
Rob, you mentioned that an audit. So I carry my Cloud with me, and I record it, and I audit everything I did. And the stupidest thing I ever said was, "This should be an easy sale," and I will never ever say that again. So I do audit it, but I record my conversations to do so.
Yes, and Glenn, you're a 1% of the 1%ers here, okay? So for
But don't
most
ever
people,
say that, please.
yes, there's no easy sale. That's when it starts to crater. So anyway, I think if we look at buyers from opening doors and finding them the perfect house, to first getting leverage on them and their commitment to being a homeowner, and not just by telling them that you have tax benefits, but by showing them how they get tax benefits. And when you work with sellers, okay, it's almost a given that they have a number in mind that's unreasonable because they're emotional. And it's almost a given that we're not going to win them over by logic when they're emotional. Okay. I'm going to tell a story about a peer of ours at Remax Select Group who dominates their neighborhood of 400 and some homes. They were at a listing appointment with somebody who had an overinflated value of their home. And as the team told me, they did a B- job on a Home Depot kitchen on a $900,000 range home. So they went out there. They were like, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your home is $800,000 price range. If you had a professionally done kitchen and professionally done bath renovation, you'd be in the 900 range. But they're trying not to offend them by saying that, your kitchen looks like hell. And they signed all the paperwork, and they conceded to putting it on at $899. They got in the car, they're driving back, and they had this idea of like, we're gonna, we really don't feel good about this. We're going to show them the other 4 homes on the market, and they'll be able to see how their kitchen and their house shows compared to the other ones. And this is a true story. I kid you not. Somebody that does 3 times more than the next closest competitor. They show them the other 4 homes, and then they get back to their house and they say, we want to do $950. They increased the price by $50,000 because they thought their house was nicer than the other ones. They couldn't see it. Okay. So logic does not work with an emotional client. And they were applying logic on top of logic, and emotion was building on emotion. And rather than getting them to say, oh, I see my kitchen's not worth that amount. Like these are beautiful kitchens. They're like, no, we want to increase the price. So that, my friends, is the end of today's session. I'm going to do something different because when I was preparing for today, I was going down the rabbit hole of the 7 levels of questioning for both buyers and sellers. And that 7th level questioning is going to be our next week's mastermind. Okay. And I'm going to whet your appetite. And the way that this 7 levels of questioning goes is, if, and Frank, you just role play with me. I said, Frank, what are you looking for when you buy a house? Frank Del Pash, you there?
Right.
I guess I lost him. So, all right. So I'll role play with you, Cindy. So Cindy, no, it's just simple. There's no stress. So I'm asking buyer. So tell me, what are you looking for?
House, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and nice yard. What's important about that?
Place for the kids to grow up.
Okay, so you want to have a nice backyard, a good neighborhood. And what's important about providing your kids with a safe environment and a nice playing area?
To stop renting, I can have a pet.
So you want to have a pet, so you want a place where you can have a pet. And what's important about that?
Good environment for the kids.
Okay, so then
To grow up.
So you ask these questions, it might wind up being that at the end of the day, I'll get Cindy to say, well, if I give my kids a safe environment, I build up some equity, I can pay for their college. I feel like I was a good parent. So in essence, I'll take, the home buyer who says they want to buy a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and then we'll end up with, well, if I do this, then, I'll give my kids the best education. I'll feel like I did a good job as a parent. That's what a 3 bedroom, 2 bath conversation ends up with when you ask next level questions. And that's going to be next week's session. Okay, it's asking next level questions because nobody wants a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house. What they want is they want an environment to raise their family, and then they want to feel like they were a good parent at the end of the day, right? That's what they want. But we say, oh, I'm trying to find a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, but I'm trying to find a place where Cindy can raise her family and have her kids say that we were a good parent and go to a good college and be independent. Like it really goes that deep. So that is next week's. If you don't like that topic, then you have next week off. If that's of any interest to you, I look forward to sharing that with you all next Friday. Have a great weekend, everybody. I hope you got 2 or 3 things that you can use. Bye, everybody.